Then my older brother introduced me to marijuana and I joined a sorority, and then alcohol was just everywhere. All of a sudden, I'm back to this full-blown raging alcoholic. And he basically just says to me, like, I'm not going to be with you if you're going to drink like that. 1,000 is never enough and 1 is too many. And in television and in film, we are seeing men being portrayed as idiots. No one respects a woman that is like, rah, 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 do what I say because I'm the man. Like, no. But when I come out and use my femininity and ask kindly and have relational rapport with these men, they will bend over backwards and do anything I ask of them. And he hands me this notebook and he's like, this is my suicide journal that I was writing to my daughters. I need you to read it. I think we have to get to the bottom of the 5th generation warfare and who is this enemy that we're really fighting. Truth and freedom. And those are the 2 hills that I will die on all day long.
Shavonne, before we start, I want to tell you a short story. So I was born in 1988 in a country that does not exist anymore, in the USSR. So right now it's Lithuania. And I want to say when I was maybe 8 to 10 to 12 years old, I noticed that something's wrong with my mom, right? So there was always some celebrations in our house, like a holiday, a Christmas, Easter, some birthdays, some parties. And they last like for 2 days, a day or 2 days. It started, that started on Friday night, so it's Friday, Saturday, right? So on Sunday, hangover for my parents. But on Monday, my dad was usually gone to a job. He never missed a work day in his life, I want to say. But I've mentioned that something was wrong with my mom. So there were some occasions when she was like, maybe she was hangover, then she continued doing alcohol and all that stuff. And the years passed by, and I was like 14, 15, 16 in my being a teenager. I realized that she has an alcohol problem, right? So she's addicted to this. So she could go once in 2 to 3 to 4 months. She could go for a week, right, on a spree, alcohol spree. Then it became more often, not once in 3-4 months, but once in 2 months, once in a month, right? So in 2014, one accident happened. So this is my mom.
Yeah. Oh.
So in 2014, she got into a coma. And she's been there for almost 4 years. Yeah, so she's been in a coma. She opened her eyes after a month. While she was sleeping, drunk, while she was sleeping, blood vessel exploded, and that's it. The brain was damaged. So we were told by doctors there is nothing we can do. So almost 4 months she was laying like this. She couldn't speak, she couldn't talk, she wasn't sane. She was just laying over there. So her mom, which is my grandma, my father, which is her husband, and me, we were looking after her for almost 4 years.
Wow.
After almost 4 years, just one day, her heart just stopped beating, and that's it. So I know what it's like to live in a family where there is an alcohol problem. So one of my, I want to say, big missions in life is to inform people, to tell people that alcohol is no good. You can't drink you can't have 1 or 2 drinks and you'll be fine. That's nothing there. Your mom just wasn't the one who could handle it. She didn't know how to drink. She couldn't get one cocktail, 1 drink, 1 something. Everyone else is fine. But as more as I know, there are a lot of problems in Europe and Lithuania, especially in former USSR, in America as well. A lot of people have drinking problems, alcohol problems. So I believe, Shavonne, you're the one to talk about this because you are the founder and the CEO of a rehab, right?
I am.
Which is called Throttle and Thrive.
It is.
You had a problem of alcohol addiction as well. And just as you told me, you risked it all to build this rehab. So let's talk about you, about your business, about you helping people with these addictions. How about that?
Great. All right. Let's get into it.
So tell me, let's start with your story. How did you end up having alcohol problems and how bad was that?
Sure. So I believe that alcoholism is somewhat of a genetic disease. I believe that I was born an alcoholic. I don't think that it was, for me personally, and different people have different stories and it happens to them in different ways. But my story, I believe I was born an alcoholic because the first time that I drank alcoholically. And I don't think I really ever drank like a normal person. And not only that, but I never really suffered trauma. Trauma is not so much a part of my story. I grew up in a wonderful home, a normal home, a loving home. I grew up with two parents that loved each other, that were wonderful, mom and dad, a brother and a sister, playing soccer, going to the beach, like doing healthy, normal kid stuff. And I was really, really close with my older brother. He's 2 years and 9 months older than me. And when I was 13, he was about 15. And one night, like, we were hanging out and he pulled out a bottle of whiskey from his closet. And he's like, "Ooh, here, try some of this." And it probably had maybe 3 or 4 shots in the bottom, warm whiskey. And I just chugged the whole thing. Just straight out the gate, alcoholic, off to the races. And got pretty drunk and ran around the block and came home and should have thrown up and didn't, I think. And that was the start of my introduction to alcohol. And I think I had alcohol poisoning pretty bad after that. So I didn't drink again for maybe like 6 months. And part of that was at 13. It's really hard to get alcohol. My parents don't really drink. My mom's never drank. Well, she drank, like, I guess a little bit in college and decided she didn't like it and then just never drank. She's not an alcoholic. She's a normie. Drinking was not her thing. My dad would have one 12-ounce beer with dinner most nights, but literally like one. And so they didn't keep hard alcohol in the house. I didn't have access to that. And then, 6 months after that first drink, my brother had a party. There was a foreign exchange student that lived across the street, and his host parents went out of town. So my brother and that foreign exchange student threw a party. And I just remember sneaking out of the house. My parents would go to bed at 10 p.m. like clockwork, and I snuck out of the house with one of my girlfriends, and we went over there. And I remember pouring a red Solo cup full of vodka. No ice, no mixer, no chaser, just like straight vodka. And basically just drinking the whole thing. And pretty much going into a blackout and going and like laying down in one of the bedrooms. And I remember actually that foreign exchange student like coming in the room and trying to like initiate something sexually with me. And then I remember my brother coming in and being like, "Hey, get out of here."
And you being 13?
13, maybe I was 14 at that time. Yeah, pretty young. And so like nothing happened, but I was grateful like my brother was there because who knows what. So from a young age, I started putting myself in very compromising situations that were not only unhealthy, but also unsafe in a lot of ways. And then my older brother introduced me to marijuana, and we started smoking swag in the orchard by our house, like out of a pipe, and then graduated to like bongs and other things. And we were stoners, and we'd get high together pretty much every day. So I was about 14, mainly getting high. That was so much easier to get.
What about your parents? Did they know?
They were kind of oblivious. My mom grew up in a very sheltered family, and she was just really oblivious. Maybe in some denial, but mainly oblivious. And on the other side of things, I was getting straight A's. I was taking all the like high-level classes and playing sports, and I was a happy kid, and things were going really well, but kind of had this other side to my life that happened basically after my parents went to bed. Or my brother and I are pretty good at like manipulation and lying and deceit and things like that. And we would make up stories and tell them to my mom. Like we were going to a dance party. We were going to underground 805 raves is what we were really doing, that were wild. But we were just telling her we were going to a dance party. And so she was just kind of, she was naive. And then in high school, I stopped smoking weed during the week because academics were really important to me, and I couldn't really maintain both. So only on the weekends I would party. So I had some level of like discipline. I had a lot of goals. I really wanted to go to college. And then my brother went away to college after my freshman year of high school. So once he was out of the picture, things maybe slowed down a little bit, but I was still hanging out with some of the stoners and had friends, and we would still get high. And then my senior year of high school, I wasn't good enough to make the varsity soccer team. I played JV for 3 years. And I looked at getting into a gym. And at just like a local, I think it was an LA Fitness, my mom and I joined together. I met some trainers that worked there that were really into working out and lifting. And they taught me how to lift weights, which is one of the greatest life skills that anyone ever taught me.
I saw your picture squatting.
Yeah.
Amazing technique.
Thanks.
Ass to the grass.
Yep. I've been lifting for about almost 20 years. And yeah, it's great. I love it. And one of those trainers, Matthew, he was really into fitness and I didn't know it at the time, but he struggled with his own mental health stuff and he was abstaining from drugs and alcohol. And he actually kind of, through a conversation, inspired me to stop smoking weed. And at that time, I had kind of started to become paranoid with the marijuana and it wasn't a part of so much my life. And I kind of fell away from that. But then the alcohol picked up more. I started to be able to, like at restaurants, maybe pass for 21. And if I was dating someone that was older and he ordered a drink, like not getting carded while being out at a restaurant or just having friends that were of age or whatever, it was easier to get alcohol. But I was also a senior in high school and was doing really well. And I had been accepted to USC and had this bright future and things were going really great. And then I started my freshman year at USC and I joined a sorority and then alcohol was just everywhere. And it was really off to the races. I would say college is when my alcoholism really like kicked in. And by the time I was 21, I recognized I don't drink like my peers. And I started to try to control my drinking and I started to try to say, oh, I'm only going to have these many drinks. Or I'm going to drink water in between the drinks or whatever other systems of manipulation to try to not get drunk. Because the difference between my brain, an alcoholic brain, and a normie is that I never get that sense of like, I'm drunk, I should stop drinking. Mm-hmm. I get the sense of, oh, this feels good, more must feel better, let's drink more and more and more. That's the only message that ever goes through my brain.
So you were drinking not to get fun, not to have fun, but just drinking
for effect. Also to have fun, but mainly for the effect. Yeah, and I was chasing that elusive drunk of being like drunk, but not blacked out. Not just buzzed, like drunk, but not blacked out. But I would inevitably end up blacked out. And at 21, I really recognized like I had a problem and some things had happened. And I'm like, I quit drinking and I'm never going to drink again. That lasted for about a month because I had no education, no understanding of alcoholism, no understanding of recovery, no understanding of what I was facing or what I was up against. So I just stopped drinking, kind of isolated and didn't drink. And then, of course, I started to feel better. And because alcoholism is a disease that tells us that we don't have a disease and it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, I thought I was fine. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good. I can go drink again. So I started drinking again and it was worse. And that's the tricky thing about alcoholism is that it's worse. It's a progressive disease and it never gets better. It only actually gets worse. So continue to drink. And then in the summer of 2009, I had moved to Hermosa Beach, which has a big drinking culture and day drinking. And I had gone on a trip to Las Vegas with my sister and some girlfriends. And after that trip, I had blacked out and it was just a complete disaster. And I came back and some of those women didn't want to be friends with me anymore. And I was just in such a place of like shame, guilt, and remorse that I'm like, oh, my drinking is such a problem. Like I've got to stop. And so for about 3 months, all I did was go to the gym, go to work. I was waitressing at the time and I was in between spring semester and fall semester about to graduate with my master's degree. And I just became kind of a hermit and I isolated and I didn't go to the bars, I didn't go out and I didn't drink any alcohol for about 3 months. And it was kind of miserable. Now I know that's white knuckling it. And then my roommate decided to have some friends over for like a guy's poker night and they had some beer. And I hardly even remember exactly what happened, but I think I drank a beer, maybe some wine. And then all of a sudden I'm back to this full-blown raging alcoholic. And I stayed in that place until 2013. So from 2009 fall until January of 2013, it was just madness. And then finally, in 2013, January, I had started dating someone and I was in love with him. I thought I was going to marry him. It'd been a whole 5 weeks. And I had gone to a charity event, and I remember specifically I bought my friend Jen and I VIP tickets, which she couldn't afford, but it would give us access to the VIP bar that was all you could drink. And because I bought the tickets, I convinced her to drive. So again, like the manipulation, the control, the scheming. And so I proceeded to get really drunk at this charity event, just to get drunk on a Sunday, because I just had this emptiness inside me that I couldn't fill. And alcohol was what I kept pouring in there to try and like get filled up, to feel connected, to feel loved, to be a part of, to have purpose, like all these things that I didn't understand at the time. And I came home from that event, and I called my boyfriend, and I opened a bottle of wine and proceeded to get blacked out drunk. And I don't remember that conversation, but I remember waking up in the morning on January 28th of 2013 and calling that boyfriend, because I had some text from him like, hey, call me when you wake up. It's like 5 a.m. I'm in my room. I've got to like go to work. I'm like, oh, what is happening? And he basically just says to me like, I'm not going to be with you if you're going to drink like that. And we hung up the phone, and I had an epiphany from God, and it was so clear, not an audible voice, but just such a knowing of, Shavonne, you can either get help, or you will face the consequences of losing everything in your life that's important to you. Not only this relationship, but all of these bad things are going to happen. So at that point, I had not gotten a DUI. I'd never been arrested. I hadn't been assaulted against my will. So nothing like terrible had really happened yet, but it was coming. And that was made extremely clear to me. And I was going to lose not only that relationship, but my career, my apartment, my vehicle, like all of the things that I'd actually worked really hard for. And in that moment, I just kind of surrendered. I'm like, okay, I need help. I have no idea what help looks like. I don't even exactly know what I need, but I need help. And at lunch, so I got myself out of bed and I got to work and super hungover. And then at lunch, I just remember driving like to a fast food parking lot place and calling that boyfriend and being like, I think I have a drinking problem. Like, I need help. And it turns out that he had 14 years sober through Narcotics Anonymous. He was 34 and he'd gotten sober at 19, so pretty young. And at that time I was 27, so he was a little bit older than me, but he had some time. And I had no idea what AA was. But he was the one that took me to my first AA meeting, and I identified as an alcoholic. And I got in touch with the women in those rooms, and they were wonderful and welcomed me in. And I started going to a women's only AA meeting like every Tuesday night, and started going to an AA like co-ed speaker meeting on Fridays, and just got involved in AA. And I started to understand alcoholism, and I started to understand what I was up against. And then I started to put time together, sobriety. And first it was physical sobriety, and then it moved towards emotional sobriety. And I started to work a program, and I started to heal, and I started to get better, and then I started to help others. And now I have been on this incredible journey of now launching this treatment facility. And so the other week I celebrated 11 years of continuous sobriety.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's the greatest gift. It is the greatest gift. And because of what I have gone through and what I've been able to overcome, I'm now able to help other people because I get it, because I've been there, because I've had those days where I wake up super hungover and drag myself to work, and like I've never missed a day of work due to my drinking. But I was there physically. I was not there mentally or emotionally. But I would drag myself to work and be like, oh, I'm not going to drink today. And it'd be a Monday. And then I would get home, and the first thing I would do is take my boots off and grab a beer. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I couldn't stop. Not only could I not stop taking that first drink, but once I took that first drink, there had to be more drinks. We say in AA that 1,000 is never enough, and 1 is too many. So for me, it's complete abstinence from alcohol and from drugs. So
the last drink you had was 2013.
Yes, 2013.
For me as well. The last drink I had was 2013 Halloween, but prior to that 2 years I was sober as well. Then I kind of tried to, maybe I should have one. I had, and the next day I was over, and I was like, no, that's not for me. So almost 11 years for me as
Congratulations.
well. But you see, for instance, I was having drinks because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be with the gang, with the guys, with the boys. Why did you had drinks? Because your mom wasn't an alcoholic, your dad wasn't. Your brother had a bad influence over you, but he left for the college. Yeah. But you continued doing that. Have you figured out why you were doing this?
I mean, I just really like getting high. Like, if I'm honest, I love that feeling. I love that altered state of reality. It was fun and it was exciting, but then it became fun with problems, and then it became problems with fun, and then it just became problems with problems. People ask me that a lot of like, well, what was the root cause? And like, why did you drink? And why did you drink so much? And were you depressed? Or were you this? And it's like, no, I'm just an alcoholic. And I don't think for me, like, it doesn't really matter the why. I just know that when I drink, like, I like to party and I like to get effed up. And there's no stopping. And I'm just like a wild party train. And it's just not who I want to be. And it's not what I want to do anymore. And so my recovery is very, very important to me. But there was not any reason per se why I was drinking besides that I like to party. I did find the like social connection is what I was seeking, but it was all fake. And so what I really wanted, which was to be loved and accepted and have community and have like really deep friendships with people, I was settling for a cheap fake version of that was alcohol induced. You know, when people drink a lot, they're like, oh, I love you and we're best friends and we're going to be together forever. But it's fake. The morning comes and they're like, ew, bye. So.
What about your grandparents? Because you told me that you were a genetic alcoholic.
Yeah, so alcoholism runs in my family. So my dad's parents were alcoholics. And then my mother's grandparents were alcoholics.
Okay, so they skipped the generation. So it's upon you and your brother. How's your brother, by the way? Did he have any problems with this?
He still suffers. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It sucks.
What scientists say about genetic alcoholism? Is that true? Are there any genes that can say that you're going to be an alcoholic?
I don't know if they can test for it. I don't know. I haven't done that research.
So, for instance, I figured out why my mom was drinking, because she was living with my dad, with the man that she didn't ever loved. So for 25 years. So before that, her parents were very strict, like straight A's, college, and etc. So she went away from the parents' house. Then she got into drink. Then she got married. She had me, and she was living with this life for 25 years. So she was kind of drinking because she wasn't just. Yeah. She wasn't happy as a woman.
Okay.
So
some people drink to numb their pain. So I do see a lot of that in the work that I do now, because essentially Throttle and Thrive is a trauma clinic.
Yes.
Like legally we're licensed as a substance use disorder and mental health facility, which is what we see. We see mainly alcoholics come in, and they are alcoholic. They have a huge substance misuse disorder, absolutely. But they also have a very, very high trauma load. And most of what I see when people need this acute level of care is there's a reason why they're drinking. And there's a lot of reasons. I call it the trifecta. Like, one, they have the affliction of alcoholism. And on top of that, they typically have pretty heavy childhood trauma, different forms of abuse. And then vocationally, because we're a first responder veteran facility, they have seen just horrific death and the worst of humanity. And then the pediatric calls that they go on can really, really trigger them. And so when you get all of that trauma and alcoholism combined, it's just too much. So sometimes I do see that there is an actual reason why people are drinking. They're trying to numb the pain, and they're trying to escape, and they're using alcohol as their solution. And then what we teach them is that there's a different solution, and alcohol is not the solution, but it's actually the problem.
So this is from your website. So Throttle and Thrive. First and foremost, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for keeping us safe, saving our lives, and fighting for freedom. You are celebrated here. It's our great honor to serve you. Our program specifically caters to the warrior and the protector, the men who have risked their lives to save others, the men who have sacrificed so that others can have a better life. We honor you. Why only veterans and first responders? Why only this demographic?
Yes. The true answer is because God told me to. And then the deeper reasoning behind that is there's a lot of different levels to it. So when I first received the vision for Throttle and Thrive and went to create it, it was modeled after the approach that I take to recovery and to life in general. And it's a no nonsense, hard work, high level of discipline sort of approach. So when I created Throttle and Thrive, like one of the first things that I did was build the website. That's how I got everything that was in my head out, like on paper, so to speak, but on these website pages. And it was all about discipline and hard work and essentially like not giving in to our desires and our emotions, because so much of alcoholism is about believing lies and believing things that are false and then acting on them from this emotional standpoint.
You only live once.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah. And so it was going to be a men's treatment facility. I grew up with my brother and his friends. I went to engineering school. I worked in commercial construction for 13 years. I'm a tomboy. I've always just been one of the guys. Even going back to Matthew, that trainer at the gym, and our friend Nick, like I was just one of the guys lifting with them. And so for me, I felt so comfortable having it be a men's treatment facility. And I built out the whole website, and then I was looking at how I would start my own facility. And there were two options. One option was to buy an existing facility and like take over the license. And the other option was to start everything from scratch. Well, since I had never run a treatment center before, I thought it would probably be a good idea to just take one over and then like make changes slowly and modify it. So I looked at two different facilities that were on the market in the size and kind of price range that I was looking at. And one of them was non-operational and I didn't like the facility and it was just an automatic no. And then the other one was operational and it was a little bit better. And the owner took me into the gym, which was in their garage, which was sort of a pathetic excuse for a gym. But that's besides the point. And he said, my firefighters love working out in this gym. I was like, wait a minute, firefighters go to rehab? Like, tell me more about this. And so after that, I called my mentor who owns multiple treatment centers down in Orange County. And I'm like, hey, do you take firefighters? Tell me about this. And he's like, no, I don't take them. They need special things. I'm like, what do you mean you don't take firefighters? Like, how dare you? And he just went on to explain, like, they have special needs and they don't really like to be with the general population and da 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 da. I'm like, okay, well then where do these guys go? And I started to look at first responder programs and different things. And Google must have just not been on my side that day because I couldn't find any programs in California for first responders. Now, after being in the industry, I know that there are several, but what came up is Warrior's Heart, which is out in Texas. And it's predominantly based for the veteran community, but they also take first responders. And they're doing an amazing job. And everything that they were doing was a part of my vision. And so then I dove in even more. I'm like, well, if this doesn't exist in California, then what if I was the one to start a facility? And then my brain kicks in. It's like, no, no, no. That is the worst business decision ever. And it will really limit you. And you is terrible. Like it's already going to be really hard to start this business. And treatment centers have such a high risk of failure. And they fail due to lack of client acquisition. It's really hard to get clients. So why would you limit yourself to just a very small niche demographic? I'm like, okay, well, okay. And then I'm thinking it through. Meanwhile, I'm praying a lot and I'm trying to listen to the voice of God as this is, a kingdom assignment. And as I'm moving through this, I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I'm listening to different podcasts, mainly on entrepreneurship. And over again in a short period of time, I keep hearing different podcasts and different voices say, niche down, have a specialty. Don't try to serve everyone. Like have a very specialized, specific focus. And then at the same time, I'm starting to hear God say, like, I want you to serve these men. And then I started to learn that there are limited options for first responders and veterans. And some of the facilities, they don't cater to this demographic, so it's not the right type of services. And then I also learned that, for example, law enforcement doesn't want to or can't go to a general population facility because a lot of the people in rehab might have been incarcerated or might have a negative view of police or might want to attack a police officer. So that's not a safe place for them. So there's a heightened need in the community for first responder veteran only facilities. And I just felt so strongly that it was God telling me, like, this is who you need to serve. And so I stepped out in faith in obedience, saying, yes, I'm going to do what you're asking me to do, thinking that I was completely limiting myself and doing like a terrible business move. And then as I got deeper and deeper in, I realized that it was a huge blessing and that there is a huge need, and it's a very tight-knit group of people. And so as I have gotten to know more and more officers and deputies and firefighters and peer support, etc., that they all talk to each other and they all help each other. And once you start to build that trust, that like the advertising and the marketing kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, because most other treatment facilities spend like $40,000 a month on advertising. We don't spend anything on advertising. I just do marketing, like virtual presentations and word of mouth, and I mail a lot of brochures, and I meet with a lot of people, and I work with peer support, and it's been a huge blessing. So there's that. And then also during the pandemic, I lived in LA in 2020, 2021, and during some of those horrific riots.
BLM?
At BLM, yeah. And it was really scary. I mean, I remember just thinking to myself, because I was basically walking distance from Abbot Kinney, and there was some stuff out on social media that the riots were going to loot and burn Abbot Kinney. And I was like, what if they come on my street, and what if they attack my apartment building? Like, what am I going to do? And I thought, like, do I drive to my parents' house? And then there was, tweets out about they were going to attack the suburbs. And I'm like, I was working at the airport at the time, and I'm like, the safest place I could go is drive on the airfield, because I could drive on the tarmac and just sleep in my truck. Like, that's like
it was so bad.
Well, I was afraid, and LA was getting looted and burned, and the riots, and I was so grateful when the National Guard stepped in, and they squashed it, and the riots and the looting and the burning, it stopped because of the National Guard. And I was so grateful, especially like during COVID, for all of our first responders that put their lives at risk, and continued to show up to work and to do their job and show up to the calls. And even when the American society at large has, been so hostile and so awful towards law enforcement, that so many officers are still showing up and still doing their job and still answering those calls. And so this is my way of having a dog in the fight and saying, we see you, we love you, we honor you, we're so happy you're doing what you're doing, and we need you. And I provide this refuge where we can take these men when they're just absolutely at their most broken point and restore their hope and their sanity and their mental health and their families, and build them back up and launch them back out into their lives.
So 2020 was a crazy year. We want to hear something crazy? So in 2020, that was summer, right? When BLM started?
About May, yeah.
Yeah, so I was in my home country in Lithuania. So in my home country in Lithuania, there were some with fuck the police in Lithuania. Why?
I don't know.
And they were like, and people were showing up and saying, what if I hit you right now? Who you gonna call? The police? Yes. But you stand with this nonsense, like fuck the police. For sure, really?
Crazy, right?
Crazy. And only after 4 years, 2 years, 3 years after, we can realize that was insanity. They almost burned the city. I was talking to a guy, he was living on Melrose Place. He was like, I was watching the news, and I was watching through the window and was like, it's almost here.
Yeah.
Am I safe right now?
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. 2020, I could go on a long rant about that, but one analogy that I love to use is first responders, especially cops, law enforcement, and veterans. They are the sheepdogs. So when you have a flock of sheep, that's like the general public, sometimes, and not all the general public, but they could be maybe naive or unarmed or unable to defend and protect themselves. So they need the sheepdog to protect them from the wolves, which are the criminals and the bad guys and that sort of thing. And so I'm the sheepdog for the sheepdogs. And so it's like, I'm just honored to be able to provide a place where they can come and get well and be protected. I naturally am very, very protective. And so these are my guys. And some of them have started calling me mom, which is hilarious because sometimes they're older than me. And so I have my adult men, children that I mother and take care of. And I have an amazing staff. And together we care for them and restore them. So
on your website is mentioned this. So our program is not for everyone. Throttle and Thrive is specifically created and designed for men, the warrior class of men. The men who have served our country and the men who continue serving today. The men who have faced incredible danger and risked his life so that others may live and for our freedoms. We focus on masculinity and men's identity. How do you view the masculinity right now in 2024? Because it is being attacked every single day. And there is a major problem.
Major. It's huge.
It's huge.
And that's one of the things I'm really passionate about fighting against. Masculinity is absolutely under attack. I think on every level. We are trying to turn men into women, which is not good. And we're trying to sometimes turn women into men, like sometimes literally, but sometimes it's psychological. And I'm not in favor of that. I'm like, no, men are fundamentally created differently than women. If you've ever worked with a population of men and women, like you would know. I mean, even my field engineers, when I was a construction manager, the way I had to work with the women was so different than how I had to work with the young men. And working with the foremen in the field, like men and women, they're just different. They are. And to say that we're the same is just sort of like nonsense. And I know personally from being in a male-dominated industry, I can't act like my male counterparts. No one respects a woman that is like, rah, 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 do what I say because I'm the man. Like, no. But when I come out and use my femininity and ask kindly and have relational rapport with these men, they will bend over backwards and do anything I ask of them. So there's that. And then I think in the media and in television and in film, we are seeing men being portrayed as idiots. Watch a sitcom, watch a movie, watch a commercial. The man, sometimes the husband, sometimes the dad, is like this buffoon, babbling idiot. And then the woman has to come in and she can do everything and she's like Superwoman, which is great. And a lot of women are. But men are not idiots and we should not portray them as such. So there's that.
What's the purpose of that? To destroy the society?
Yeah. We could go down a rabbit hole of lots of
it's not even a rabbit hole anymore.
Conspiracy theories. But
it's not a conspiracy theory.
There's a lot of things I think that are at work that are trying to destroy society. And I think there's a huge movement of communism and Marxism and anarchy that's really trying to take over. And we are in a period of fifth generation warfare. We're fighting an enemy that we can't see and that we can't identify and that we don't exactly know who it is.
Yeah, we can't even acknowledge. A lot of people don't even realize that.
Yeah, it's called fifth generation warfare. It's like this invisible enemy. I mean, who is it? Is it the superpowers that be meeting in these global forums? Or is it the, unknowing kind of babbling idiots on TV that we see that are perpetuating these false narratives mainly just for financial gain? Is it your common everyday citizen that is just deceived, like radically deceived?
I believe it's all these ways. From the TV, from the powerful people, from the regular Joe, the shows, the music, the industry, the art, everything. Indoctrination, yeah. And they started from schools.
Yeah, the school, yeah. I mean, I don't have kids, and so I'm not as involved or as aware of everything that is happening, but what I have seen, it's absolutely terrifying. And so one thing that I talk about a lot is truth and freedom. And those are the two hills that I will die on all day long. And I will continue to the best of my ability to stand up for truth and freedom. Those are two fundamental principles that I'm like,
But I kind of believe that the biggest attack is not on masculinity, not on women, men, children, kids, or something like that. The biggest attack is on the God.
Yeah.
They took out the God from schools. They took out the God from people's lives, souls, hearts. And when you do that, you can say whatever you want. Yeah. If you say that this is a godless country, a godless society, so 50% of population, which are men, are not needed anymore. You can do everything on your own.
Yeah.
How can you say that? Then there are people. I was watching a podcast a few days ago. Bill Maher said on his podcast that he thinks that the planet Earth is overpopulated.
Which it's not.
But how can you say that? So you're saying that, I want to say, let's say 50% of people should die. That would be a better for the planet, right?
They're basically saying we want mass genocide. That's
Yes,
what they're saying.
this is what he's saying.
The
This planet
scariest
is
thing that I see is
overpopulated.
that they're trying to control the food supply. And that's where I'm like, oh, we got a problem. We got a problem. You know, they're trying to limit the amount of like beef that we eat and selling us some lie that cows are somehow responsible for, you know, carbon emissions and killing the planet. And that's not true. It's just lies upon lies and false data.
That's a misleading, because if you eat a great steak, you're gonna be full for 4 hours, right? If you have a shitty burger, after an hour you're gonna be starving. You wanna eat more and more and more. So the consumption is bigger than the real food.
Yeah, and it actually takes a lot. I believe it takes a lot more like energy and resources and things to produce that fake food.
Yes.
And what people also don't understand, even with like a vegan diet, is that when you are growing crops, then you have to kill all the animals that are trying to come in and eat those crops. Versus if you just have free range cattle out in pasture, you have a natural ecosystem that's able to take place.
And calorie wise, if you want to have 2,000 calories a day from meat sources with fats and proteins, you're going to have this amount of food. If you want to have 2,000 calories from the plants, that's half a table of food.
Yeah.
That's maybe 2,000 calories. So I've been vegan for, I want to say, half a year. Then I've been pescatarian for 2 to 3 years. Right now, I acknowledge that I was feeling terrible. My strength, my physical strength went away like 50%.
Wow.
But at the time, I was brainwashed. I watched the movie, What the Health, I want to say was the name of the TV show on Netflix. And I was like, no way, I can't do that. I can't kill a chicken. I can't kill a turkey or a cow, right? So I don't have even the right to eat this meat. So I was brainwashed. After only 4 to 5 years, I realized how dumb was I, and how delusional there are a lot of people still in the world that thinks that if they don't eat meat, that's good for the planet. That's actually bad for the planet.
Yeah.
You destroy it.
We're supposed to eat meat.
We're supposed to eat it. Not meat that you find in fast food chain restaurants. That's not meat, that's bullshit. But the real meat.
Yeah.
Have it once a day and you'll be full.
Yeah.
One steak a day. Some turkey, some chicken, a few
we eat
eggs.
a lot of meat at the treatment center. We've got a smoker, we've got a barbecue, we eat a lot of meat.
Let's continue. So we look closely at how men are created, built, and designed to function. Can you share some thoughts on how men are created for the audience that are delusional and thinking that men and women are the same, just the hormonal stuff, you've got more estrogens, we've got more testosterone, that's the main difference, right?
Yeah. Mainly, it's that men are created to provide and to protect and to go out and hunt, and men like to chase things that run away. Where women...
On all levels.
Yeah. Yeah. Where women are typically more in need of like security and shelter and provision, and women are created to receive and men are created to provide. That's like a very basic
So
snapshot.
feminists hate you, right? Basically. Because you're saying the things that were true for, I want to say, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, but 20 years ago something switched, yes.
Yeah.
But your example, you climbed a career ladder. You were in a team that designed a Delta wing at LAX.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So you were pursuing a career.
Yes. So I have a master's degree in civil engineering from USC, and then I worked for a large general contractor for 13 years. So I've been in a male-dominated industry and worked alongside men and had the exact same job as the men. And I'm in favor of women being educated, and I'm in favor of women having careers. And I don't think that's in contrary to women still being women. I don't think that we need to act like men, and I actually think that we have such a beautiful strength and power and ability to have incredibly successful careers as women. We don't need to be men, but we can still be CEO. We can still be an executive. We can still have this great career. And I actually would love to be married and have children, and that's something that I've wanted for a really long time, but I'm not willing to settle. And I'm not willing to just get married for the sake of getting married. And I would rather hold on to the hope of meeting the man that is going to be on my level and share my vision and my passion and my idea of what purpose looks like in life. And so I've been waiting for that. And then at the same time, I've been living in Los Angeles since August of 2004, so almost 20 years. And the men here, and it's, of course, this is a generalization, but it just hasn't been like the right fit. So there's multiple levels to that. There's everything from a lot of men find me really intimidating, or I find that some men just want more of a passive, easygoing wife that's maybe more like docile. And so I'm definitely not everyone's cup of tea. Yeah. And then I've also changed dramatically. I mean, who I was 11, 12 years ago when I was still drinking is radically, radically different than who I am today. And then
So right now you're stronger. You have more energy?
Well, I have integrity and dignity today, which I did not have those before. And I have a lot of discipline. And I'm more mature and more emotionally developed, and I have emotional sobriety. And I'm very clear on who I am and what I want and what I don't want and where my boundaries are.
Amen.
Yeah. So a lot of different things have happened. I also know that I worked for that general contractor for those 13 years for a very specific purpose. God literally had me in boot camp. And I was in boot camp to learn how to run a business, to learn how to hire people, to learn how to run a team, to learn how to write contracts, to learn cost control, to learn accounting, I learned so many things. I mean, I worked for an amazing, amazing corporation, and I learned everything that I needed to know. And then, I mean, God's been pretty clear. He's like, okay, now you have to get divorced from that corporate career and you have to launch Throttle and Thrive. And it has to kind of come into a place where I'm not working there 14 hours a day. Right now it's about 12 hours a day. So it's been
Only
12, 6 days a week. But yeah, but it's slowly getting easier, and the business is becoming more functional on its own as my staff is getting better and better trained, and I'm, able to have like some revenue and hire more people, and just all of our process and procedures are getting in place. And so I know that God wanted me to do all of those things first, and I'm still very hopeful that I'll meet my husband, but he's going to be a really special man. So
we exclusively serve law enforcement, active duty military, veterans, police, sheriffs, first responders, firemen, paramedics, and dispatchers. So that was kind of a breaking news for me when I was reading your website, and I was like, so these men have problem? Just like you said, firemen have problem? Really?
Yeah.
Then I watched a few testimonials. So yeah. Randy, a retired LAPD detective, he said that he had a major problem, right? Then Mike, retired 30 years firefighter. Mm-hmm. He said that he had a drug problem as well. So what kind of problem do these
They're addict alcoholics. I mean, addict and alcoholic to me is the same thing. It's just a different drug of choice. Mm-hmm. So they typically have the childhood trauma, and then they just have the affliction of addiction, and then they also have the vocational trauma, and it just becomes too much. So typically for first responders especially, every day they're going to work and they're working a lot of overtime, and they're constantly going on calls, and they're usually working so much that they don't have the time to really take care of their mental health, to decompress, to chill out, to take care of their nervous system, and to process. And culturally, there is a little bit of this like, oh, just suck it up, buttercup, and go on the next call and push it down, and that shouldn't affect you. And by and large, actually, for the first responders that do not have childhood trauma, they are actually able to compartmentalize and separate, like, this is my job versus this is like my personal life. And they do that really well, and that's amazing. But for the ones that have the affliction of addiction and they have childhood trauma, the vocational stress on top of those things, it just becomes too much. And what we typically see is they haven't been taking care of like their mental health, or sometimes their physical health, or their relationships, or whatever it is. And then the job starts to play on or impact that childhood trauma. So typically what we see is that someone was maybe molested or physically abused as a child. And then that man has now grown up and he wants to protect others. He wants to serve. And then he starts working maybe on the like child abuse, like calls or that part of the department, maybe on an investigative like detective level, and he starts working so closely where he's seeing his childhood story in his work, and then he's going home and drinking just to like numb that pain, to make those memories shut up, because trauma, it actually lives in the body and it lives in the psyche, and until it has been processed, it will continue to haunt and torment someone. And so a large emphasis of what we do at the trauma clinic is we reduce that trauma load and we help them and we give them tools and we practically implement these trauma processing modalities to get their trauma load down.
Yeah, so they work a lot, they risk their lives, they go through all this stuff. And at the same time, what we do is we stand with the fuck the police.
Yeah, which is horrible.
The police, which is...
I'm like, who do you think is going to show up when you call 911? Like, people are just idiots.
It's so ungrateful.
Yeah.
Like, they're risking their lives, literally.
Well, it's anarchy. It's Marxism, it's anarchy. It's just... There's a deeper motive, and I don't exactly know what it is or how it is, but essentially, like, it's a fight for power. And if they can get rid of the police, which we're seeing it in California. I mean, stealing is basically legal. Criminals are not actually going to jail. I mean, I hear it straight from the cops. Like, they're like, yeah, it doesn't do me any good. I arrest this person. Even if we book them, they're released the next day. Like, you can go burglarize a house and not go to jail. Like, what are we doing in California that someone thinks that that's a good idea?
Have you heard this joke? So In-N-Out is out of Oakland because of the crime. So In-N-Out is out of Oakland because of the crime. So they're going to the safer area, which is Palestine. That was a freaking joke. So can you share some success stories or stories of your clients, of this incredible men that got into your facility and they got out clean and they're happy right now and they're good?
Yeah. One of our earlier clients, so back in like summertime, sheriff deputy came in. He had been out on IOD, injured on duty, and he came in. He'd been home for maybe 6-7 months, and he was drinking every day and smoking weed, just sitting at home, trying to heal from this injury that had happened at work. But meanwhile, his mental health was just declining and declining and declining. And finally, like, he was seeing a therapist, and she recommended that he come to our treatment facility for inpatient care. And so he did end up coming. And I just remember when he first came in, he couldn't sit still. He couldn't sit through a meal. Like, he would literally like pace around the dining room table.
How old was he?
31.
Oh, man.
Young.
Very young.
Yeah, really young. And he was an Army veteran as well. And slowly but surely, we got him first physically sober, and then we started to introduce him to AA, and we started to get him into the therapy, and he started to get slowly but surely like better and better. And we also have a wellness director, because this particular individual didn't want to be on pharmaceutical meds like antidepressants, anti-anxiety, sleep meds, etc. And so we do offer wellness services where we can use supplements, vitamins, other like lifestyle modifications to be able to help with anxiety, depression, and sleep. And so our wellness director stepped in, and she put him on different supplements to like help with different things. And he was using binaural beats to help with anxiety. It's like these headphones you put on, and it like has this calming effect. And slowly but surely we started to see him get better. And then about 2 weeks into his treatment, he comes into my office and he's just sobbing. And he hands me this notebook, and he's like, "This is my suicide journal that I was writing to my daughters. I need you to read it." And so I read like the entries that were in there. And he's like, "Shavonne, you've saved my life. Like, thank you for saving my life. If I hadn't have come here, I was going to die." Because he owned and had access to firearms. And he's like, I had a plan to eat my gun, and I was going to do it. And that's how a lot of law enforcement, they commit suicide by firearm. And it's so sad, because either they don't know that they can get help, or the pain is just so much. They're in so much agony that all they can think about is like, I've got to get out of this pain. And it's so heartbreaking. And so that's where I love getting them to come in, because every single person that has come in has gotten that relief. All of them. They all get better. We had a firefighter come recently from out of state, from Florida, and I got a call from peer support, actually in Indiana, different retired firefighter who is amazing. And he and I work together to help a lot of firefighters. And so he's like, hey, Shavonne, I've got a firefighter. He's in Florida. He needs to come to you. So I start talking to this guy, and I mean, he's bad. He's been drunk for like 2 weeks, and he's had, decades of a drinking problem. And he's just been through hell. He's been through the childhood trauma. He's been through the family trauma. He's been through the vocational trauma. He's lost his, 3 kids, and he's divorced, and he's just got all this hurt and all this pain, and he's been through treatment, and he's been trying to get sober, and he's had horrific experiences at other treatment facilities. I mean, he's been to the places that are basically like a psych ward where they take your shoelaces and they take the jawstring off your joggers, and like you can't have anything because everyone's on super high suicide watch, which, on one hand, like you have to do because you can't allow these people to hurt themselves. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's so dehumanizing. And so he's been through horrible experiences. And so he's like drunk on the phone talking to me. And I just remember I was like working at building trust with him because he had been, taken advantage of and been through such horrible situations. And one of the questions he asked me, he's like, do your sheets at the treatment center, do they smell like hospital sheets? Are they gross? I'm like, hey, they're Vera Wang sheets. Like, no, they're great. Because they're my favorite. So like all my favorite things is what I bought for the treatment center. And because we do such difficult work emotionally and even physically, I wanted some of the creature comforts to be really comfortable. So I spent a lot of money on really nice sheets. And I just remember like building slowly but surely, like building rapport with him, building trust. And now like he's doing so amazing. He's sober. He's excited. He really gets it. And I just remember making these promises to him when he was in that place because he was suicidal. Hey, it's going to be okay. You're going to get better. You're not always going to feel this way. I promise you that pain is going to go. You're going to get the relief. Like I promise you. And I was stepping out in faith, knowing that like it would work for him, but it does. It does every time. They come in and we're with them and we love them until they can love themselves.
And insurance covers it all?
It depends. Typically, depends on the insurance policy, depends on the benefits, depends on a lot of things.
So it depends on whether he's a firefighter or a veteran or a police officer?
No. Just so depends on the insurance policy. Yeah.
It depends on the city or... I gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of different factors.
So out of 100% of your clients that were at your facility, how many of them were covered fully with the insurance?
Maybe 40%, maybe.
Okay, almost 50.
Maybe.
How much does it cost? For instance, so you say that 30 days is enough, but some of them, they go to 60 and 90 days. So approximately how much does it cost?
It depends. We bill insurance a lot of money and we see what they pay us of what we bill. Sometimes it's more than our cash pay rate and sometimes it's less. I don't balance bill my clients. But sometimes they don't approve the full 30 days. Like sometimes people only get approved 12 days or maybe 20 days. And so we offer options for them to continue at a cash pay rate. Or if someone doesn't have insurance, they can come in and pay cash. I just work with people on where they're at and their ability to pay, their willingness to come in, and if they're the right fit for our treatment program.
So most of the time, it's not the money problem why people don't go at your place. They're afraid of something. They don't acknowledge the problem. That's why they don't come.
Sometimes they don't know that they can get help, or they've tried to get help and it hasn't gone well, or they don't know there's a first responder only facility. So mainly like lack of knowledge of understanding like that we exist, or there's other facilities that can provide services. Sometimes they don't want to stop drinking. Like a lot of people that are in addiction, they don't want to stop. So not everybody that has a problem wants to actually deal with it.
But that's just a matter of time. If they don't want to stop drinking now, maybe a year later, he's going to say, I'm done, I'm good, I'm ready.
Nope, sometimes they die before that ever happens, which is so tragic. And that's one of the things we're trying to get ahead of. And one of the things that the departments and the agencies are doing actually a really good job of is creating wellness departments and peer support teams and people that are going in and helping officers and deputies and firefighters, etc., work on their mental health and see the signs and work on substance abuse and work on resiliency and work on all of the things that make someone like a healthy person. And so training them, just as they are trained to put on protective gear physically for their bodies, to put on protective gear like for their minds and their mental health.
Statistics wise, so 100% that came at your facility. So how many of them had the problems with alcohol, and how many of them had problems with the drugs? I mean, the opioids, the pharmaceutical drugs.
We haven't seen really any addiction to opioids.
Oh, really?
Yet. I'm sure that we will. But so far, 95% of our clients have just been like straight alcoholics.
I thought that you're going to have a lot of painkiller
With
problems.
the general population, you'll see a lot more of that. And
Vice versa.
I'm sure we will see it, especially when people get injured and they're prescribed, Vicodin or whatever, opiates. But we haven't seen that at our facility yet.
Okay, I got you. Mm-hmm. So, Shavonne, what do you think is... So you've mentioned that people, the first responders, they used to take their lives, so they're suicidal, right? So do you think God would solve this problem this way? So if you're a true believer, if you're a man of God, you know for sure that God intended you to live, and it is a sin to take your life, right? So if they would be true believers, they would consider, maybe they would drink, maybe they would abuse some drugs or something else, but they never would take their lives.
I don't like to put suicide in that category of like, oh, this is a sin. I just think it's the wrong verbiage. It's the wrong framework.
But it's a major sin. You can't do suicide.
I don't know. I just have so much compassion for them. They're in so much pain.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They're in so much pain, and they just can't see a way out because of everything that's happened to them. And then the alcohol or the drugs, it also clouds their ability to think clearly. And their brains a lot of time are actually damaged. So traumatic brain injury is a thing that we see a lot, because a lot of first responders, they've been in an accident, or firefighters, they've fallen like through a building, or they've had sports injuries that were never addressed where they've had traumatic brain injury, like severe concussions. And so their brains actually aren't processing the way that they should, and they need to get brain treatment to heal properly. So physically, spiritually, emotionally, they're being attacked on all sides, and I just have such a heart for them. And I don't like to condemn anyone. And the truth is that we're all sinners, and we all fall short of the glory of God. And He has so much grace and mercy for us, and He loves us so much. And so my heart is to just reach these guys before anything is like final, and to get to them, and for them to understand, like, we can reduce your trauma load. We can take away that pain. Like, there is hope. You can get better. You are not always going to live in this place of misery and despair.
What about their families? Do they know that the man in the family has a problem?
Typically, yeah.
But it's his decision. He has to make this decision to go to your place.
Yeah, we're not jail, so they have to come voluntarily.
No, I mean, he has to acknowledge that he has a problem and he wants to change.
It sure doesn't work well if they don't. We had someone come in from a sheriff's department, and he was basically mandated, hey, you have a drinking problem. You have to go to treatment, or we're going to fire you. So, of course, he chose to come to treatment. But he didn't really want to stop drinking. And he even recognized, like, he had a drinking problem, and he kind of did the song and dance of like, oh, yeah, I'm going to stay sober. But, like, we can discern that he's basically, like, lying or BSing. And so I don't think that he's sober today. I don't. And ultimately, people have to want to get the help. But the only way, really, that we see that alcoholics are willing to get the help is that they have to become really, really, really miserable, because alcoholics are very, very tough, very strong-willed, very resilient people, and they can withstand a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. And so for them to get to the place where they're actually willing to come to that place of desperation, where they're willing to do whatever it takes to get better and willing to go through a program of recovery, they have to get to a really miserable state. So I like to say, like, no one comes to our facility when they're having a bad day. When they call me, they're on the verge of death.
So that's just basically timing. At the right time, at the right place,
The right
they
time,
find
the
you.
right
Yeah.
place. Yeah. And that level of willingness, some people never get to that place of willingness. They don't. And they die of heart attack or brain aneurysm or
DUI.
cirrhosis or, yeah. I've
What
had cops get thrown in jail and then come to our facility. Yeah.
What about the chances of a relapse?
Relapse is it's very high just in general across the board. I think we have a much lower rate of relapse than most other treatment facilities. I
For
think
instance, 30, 50%.
it's hard to quantify, and I need to really sit down and look at the numbers. But of the men that we've provided care to, I would say 80% of those have done what we said that they should do and working an aftercare program. And of that, 80% of them are still doing amazing and are sober and are working a program and doing great. But the ones that don't take our recommendations and don't work a program of recovery, they have relapsed and they're not doing very well. And they basically did all the things we told them not to do. So I like to say that we're a launch pad and we are going to restore them to physical well-being and restore their mental health and bring down their trauma load. But we're a launch pad that's going to set them out on this trajectory of success, but it's up to them to maintain it. They are adult men and they have to make the choice to show up to the AA meetings, to participate in their recovery, to say no to the things that they know that are bad and to say yes to the things that actually work, like seeing their therapist and going to meetings and getting a sponsor and working the 12 steps and being a part of a healthy community. And that might even sometimes look like saying no to certain things that, are good. Like we tell them, you can't go back to working, 80 hours a week right away. Like you have to set some sort of boundaries with work so that you can have time to participate in your recovery. And so when they do what we tell them to do, they do really, really well.
What's the hardest thing of participating in AA, for instance? It's embarrassing. It's not interesting.
It's time.
We all have time. That's bullshit. We sit on the couch and binge.
It's time
binge
and it's
watch
an
Netflix.
indirect financial. So especially with law enforcement and fire, overtime. Most of the guys that they come in not a good financial situation. Most of them have adjusted their lifestyle to be dependent on their overtime. Meaning they're living beyond their means and they're living in this state of financial crisis. They have debt. They've bought things they can't afford, blah, 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 blah. And then they also, a lot of times it's so sad, they have been through a divorce, which is emotionally just has wrecked them. And then it's taken a lot of their resources. And then sometimes their ex-wife is still living in the house that they pay the mortgage on. And now they also have to go rent an apartment somewhere. So they've incurred all of these astronomical costs that are outside their means. So they're trying to work all this overtime. So some of them are working 90 hours a week. That's more like law enforcement because fire has, certain amount of 24-hour, 48, 96-hour shifts that they work and then several days off. So that's a kind of a different structure. But for law enforcement, I'll see these guys working, 90 hours a week. And it's no wonder you relapsed. You don't physically have time to go to any meetings. You're not working on your mental health. You don't even have time to process all of the trauma that you've seen at work. And so you're just resorting back to your old habits. And so going to AA requires that they're saying no to that overtime pay, which means that they have to have the discipline to live within their means, which is to live on a 40-hour work week salary and then use the overtime just as additional, savings or paying off debt or whatever. But a lot of them aren't doing that. So one of the things that have implemented in the treatment center is I teach on personal finance. Graduating from USC, I had $60,000 in debt when I graduated, and I had to learn very quickly about personal finance. I stuck my head in the sand for the first couple of years because I was still drinking, but then as I got sober, I'm like, I got to learn to manage money because this is not working. And I paid off all of that debt, and then actually that's how I was able to start saving money, and I thought I was saving to buy a house, but I was actually saving to start a treatment center. And so I amassed quite a bit of money by living within my means, always having a roommate, never driving a fancy car. I don't buy designer anything. I really live a very, very frugal life. And that has now blessed me and enabled me to create a treatment center where I get to save people's lives and do something that I'm so passionate about. And that's part of my story. And it's just the most incredible thing to get to do what I do. And so I've implemented teaching on personal finance. because it's something that's typically not taught. Unless your parents really understand how to manage money, you're not going to get taught how to manage it unless you go out and you seek that knowledge and you become educated. And personal finance is actually really straightforward. The knowledge component is maybe 20% of the puzzle. The 80% that's hard is the emotional component of, can I deny myself having Uber Eats, and can I develop a practice of discipline to learn how to cook, to meal plan, to grocery shop, and to cook for myself? Can I deny myself from buying that hat and that hoodie and that new pair of shoes for $150 when I need to be paying off this credit card? Can I have the discipline to save up cash in the bank for when my car breaks, or I need to move, or I get a root canal, or whatever else happens? And so I have created these teaching modules on basic personal finance, and trying to, again, break down the false narratives of the things that these people believe about money or whatever it is that's holding them back from stepping into truth and freedom.
So it's basically like they're going back to school.
I run a school for adult men.
Yes.
And we teach on alcoholism and trauma and some basic life skills. I run a school for men. Yeah. That's what it is, because we're a 24/7 residential care facility. So we get them up really early and we run clinical all day long, and we don't watch any TV, and they are just constantly learning and experiencing things that help build them up in different
Out of
ways.
your experience working with the customers, what's the most difficult thing for them to do? To stop drinking, to start doing something?
A lot of it is actually to face the fear. So often when we're working on aftercare planning, so that's looking at what their life is going to look like once they leave treatment, they come up with a lot of excuses about why they can't create a plan. And so we try to take away those excuses as much as possible. They're afraid of, like, well, I don't want to commit to this because maybe it's not going to work, or maybe I can't do that, or I don't know what my schedule is going to be like, or what if this happens? Like there's a lot of fear. And I think in general, fighting fear is one of the biggest battles that we participate in. So.
But yeah, they don't fear risk their lives to save others,
Yeah, no.
but the fear of just planning and having a different life. So, for instance, the different life for them looks like this. From now on, they work out. They don't party. They don't drink. They don't binge watch Netflix and sit on the couch. That's how it looks like.
I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. But that, I would say, the like uncertainty factor is a big one, and then the time factor.
If a customer has a family, does that help, or it does?
It depends on how supportive or not supportive the family is. So, I mean, lack of a family is usually traumatic on some level if they're estranged from their family. But if someone, like, let's say, hasn't gotten married and doesn't have kids, I think that's actually kind of good, because then they're not dealing with that emotional distress of, oh, I've gotten divorced, or, oh, I haven't been a good dad, because so many of them come in with such shame and guilt from not having been present for their kids, like in different ways. So if they haven't had that experience yet, sometimes that can be helpful. Or sometimes, they are more motivated to be sober and to work a program because they really want to be a good dad and they want to restore their relationship with their kids. So.
What about women? Do you have plans to opening a facility for women?
Not anytime soon, but potentially one day in the future.
But for the veterans, first responders as well, or just women?
To be determined. I've had people ask me. As far as I know, there is not a women's only treatment facility for the veteran first responder community. We'll see.
But
I don't know.
You would never do men and women combined because of the potential intrigues, sex, and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bad idea to have a co-ed facility. Now, granted, most facilities are co-ed. And as far as I know, we're the only men's only first responder veteran facility. All the other ones are co-ed. So if like a female firefighter, a female cop, which there's plenty of them, want to go get treatment, like they can go to a co-ed facility. That is an option. But for me, yes, I don't want my clients sleeping with each other because that is like a legitimate problem. And the industry has a really dark side to it. The term treatment babies is a thing. Like women getting pregnant.
Treatment baby, oh man.
Getting pregnant at treatment because they're sleeping with either the staff or the clients. So
You just provide condoms,
I take
but they don't use them.
right. I take a really hard stance on that. My clients are not going to sleep with each other, and my staff is not going to sleep with the clients. Like, absolutely not. It's just so unethical. Our clients come in so broken, so desperate, and actually in such a vulnerable place because they recognize that the way that they've been living and what they've believed has led them to a place of absolute despair. So they come in with this like, show me how to live, teach me anything. Like, I'm open, I'll do whatever you say. And that's a really vulnerable place to be. And so if they're not in an ethically run treatment facility, they can get fed lies or things that don't work or half truths or other things. So it's very, very important to me to be protective of them. Also, some of the men come in and they're married. The last thing I want is someone cheating on their wife while they're in treatment. Like, not under my watch. So there's that. The other thing is some of the men come in and they actively admit that they have womanizing problems. So I don't want that to also be a struggle for them while they're in treatment. And then a lot of the men come in and talk about how they have sought their validation and their identity through women. And by women's affection or sexual relationships with women, that's like really validating for them. And we are trying to teach them more about stepping into their identity and not being in like a codependent relationship. So there's that. And then also it's just kind of distracting in general to have the other sex there. So for example, one of the guys that we have right now, he's in his 20s and he's still working on some maturity issues, but he openly admits, he's like, yeah, if there was a woman in group, like I definitely wouldn't open up about this, that, or the other. And even some of my older men clients that are in their 50s or 60s, they're like, yeah, if a woman was in this group, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't want to share. So there's that.
Yeah, let's not forget that these guys are tough. Firefighters are tough. These are not regular men.
Yeah.
And they're in a very vulnerable position when they come.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, I'm a woman and I'm going to teach you finances?
Oh.
All right.
No, they're sweet. It hasn't been a problem.
That's good.
Yeah.
To admit the problem, and yeah, that's good.
I don't know if I just don't see it or if I'm blind or whatever, but there's not a lot of like machismo, I'm a man, you're a woman, don't tell me what to do. Like,
that's
not
awesome.
at all. They're so respectful and they're kind and they're so appreciative, and everyone is very respectful of like, I'm the owner and I'm the one who calls the shots, and they're so sweet. So they like ask permission for different things, and like, it's great. I mean, sometimes some people are having a hard day and they'll push back against certain things, like, why can't I have my phone right now? Or like, why do I have to follow this rule? But usually they're going through an emotional journey and they're triggered by something else and they're kind of lashing out at us, and we're just there to love them and support them and work through it with them. And I've had some guys, get mad at me or say stupid things or whatever. And then they come in my office like a day later and they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's okay. So I've learned to just like stay even keel and like ride it out.
You just gotta go to a squat rack and squat.
Yeah. Well, I take them to the gym.
How much do you squat?
I can max out like one rep about 175 pounds, and I weigh about 135 pounds. So on a good day.
That's good.
I usually go for like lower weight and higher reps, but I'm very strong, and if I need to put them in their place, I'm just like, hey, come to the gym with me. And none of them can keep up because it's a very high intensity interval training that's very cardiovascularly intense, and I've been doing it now for 6 or 7 months. Plus I've been weightlifting for 20 years, but I'm like, I know the workouts, I know the routines, and I've been doing it long enough that like,
so just by doing...
And they're, a few days out of detox.
Yeah. But just by doing 20
fair.
Squats, that's it. Your heart rate is going to go up.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Deadlifts, even with this little weight, you're going to feel it. Your heart's going to feel it. You're going to throw up right away. All the machismo is going to go away.
Yeah.
So. Is it harder or easier to treat relapse?
It depends. Most of our clients not most, I'd say 60, maybe 75% of our clients have been to a different treatment facility.
Before?
Yes. And they have since relapsed. Sometimes they put together some period of sobriety. Sometimes they relapsed more immediately. It just depends. What I frequently hear is that our treatment facility is really different. And it's our staff and our program and how we communicate the message that's actually really different and really inspiring and really actually launches them into sobriety that they didn't see or didn't have before. One of the differentiating factors is some first responder programs, they're not based in Alcoholics Anonymous. They're not really based in recovery. They're more of a mental health program, which is great for people that are struggling with mental health. But we're a substance abuse treatment facility. So everyone that comes in, they're an alcoholic or they have an addiction. And so it's so important that we get them sober and teach them about sobriety and teach them about recovery and get them into a program of recovery. Because if they are drinking or using, you cannot make any progress on the mental health, or it's so insignificant that it hardly matters. In order for them to make progress on the mental health and reduce that trauma load and really get better, they have to stay sober. And so that's our primary focus, is teaching them how to stay sober while also getting them to understand that overcoming their mental health challenges and processing that trauma load is going to take time. We bring it way, way down. But I mean, 30 days, we do not have a magic wand. No one is like magically fixed in 30 days. It's a launch pad. And then they have to continue their program after they leave and continue to work on the issues.
So is it true that there are no ex-alcoholics and ex-drug addicts?
It's controversial. I believe that I'm still an alcoholic, even though I haven't drank in 11 years.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm totally an alcoholic.
But
you should see how I eat ice cream. Like...
But that's not alcoholic.
I still have alcoholic tendencies, and I will see them in things that I do or behaviors that I have. And so in AA and through the 12 steps, like alcoholism it's more than just drinking. Like drinking is the symptom of my alcoholism, but it's not alcoholism itself. Like I have a spiritual abnormality. I have an obsession of the mind, and I have a disease that wants to kill me. And it will manifest in like different ways and different things, and it has to be kept in check. Also, my alcoholism is right behind me doing push-ups, and it has gotten stronger over the past 11 years. It hasn't actually gotten better. Now,
So it's not getting easier.
I am better. Oh, I have zero desire to drink. The thought of drinking, I'm like, ugh, makes me want to throw up. Like I have zero desire to drink. But if I were to drink, all the wheels would fall off and I would either die or my whole life would implode in a very short amount of time. And I know that that is true because I've seen it time and time and time and time again. So my life is better. My emotional sobriety is great. But my alcoholism is still there and it still wants to kill me.
But you're sober for 11 years. So it's like 25% of your life.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I've seen people relapse after being sober for 20 years.
Trauma.
And they get divorced and they lose their house and then they lose their job. I mean, I just had a police officer retired. He had 9 years of sobriety and then some things happened, and the relapse is always, you can always see it coming. It's just people usually don't do anything to stop it from coming. But he struggled with some different things. And then there was that one event that was just too much, and he picked up and started drinking. And within a week, he like went on this total bender and ended up getting arrested and landed himself in jail. This is a cop who is 67 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. After 9 years of being sober. Our alcoholism gets worse. It's just that we don't see it manifest in our life because we're not actively drinking. But if I were to take a drink today, within a very, very short amount of time, my life would just be absolutely unmanageable and everything would just completely crumble. And I would probably die.
You just don't control yourself, right?
I can't. Not when it comes to drinking. And the delusion to think that I would be able to drink like a normal person, it's a delusion.
So you're a woman of God. Why
Yeah.
did God created you this way?
So I could help other people. So I could be a light. So I could save them because they're dying. so I could carry my experience, strength, and hope to launch them into recovery. And I love being sober, and I'm so grateful, and it's so much fun. My life is incredible today, and I have no desire to drink. I don't like suffer from like alcoholism in the cravings or the mental obsession. Like, no, not at all.
But is it possible for ex-alcoholic, for instance, after 30 days, 90 days treatment, to go back to his life and hang out with friends that party, that drink, and he doesn't drink? Is it possible?
Sure. I don't really recommend it, not that early in sobriety, but like I can be around people that are drinking and it doesn't really bother me.
But you can be an ex-alcoholic and after treatment, you can't say, I'm going to have a glass of wine, I'm going to have one drink. It's sobriety, 100%, right? It's either this way or that way.
Different people do different things. I personally believe that complete abstinence produces the best results. And I'm kidding myself if I want to have one beer. I never wanted to have one beer. I want a 6-pack and a whole bottle of vodka. And if I can't have that, like, you're just teasing me. What is one beer going to do me? I drink for the effect. And to delude myself that I'm just drinking a beer to have one beer and relax is a complete delusion. I drink for the effect.
Yeah, my mom did the same way. I remember just glass of vodka, like this, like water.
Mm-hmm.
Boom,
Yeah.
after 30 minutes after, she's like,
Yeah.
she's done.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated. How can I do that? I'm like, I do 20 grams and like,
Yeah, it's a disease.
straight like this.
I mean, I remember like going on bender trips and I would still be like hungover, probably halfway have alcoholism or alcohol poisoning. And then we still wanted to like go out and party and like drinking and like forcing myself to drink because I just really wanted to feel that like euphoric feeling of being drunk. But I never got it. I would just go into a blackout and then wake up and just be in this agony.
What can everyone of us, of the viewers, can do for the society to get rid of this problem or just to minimize it by 1%? What can we do?
I think understanding that it's a disease and it's not a moral failing. So recognizing the difference between those two and then taking away the stigma of like, oh, you're a bad person because you're an alcoholic. Like, no, we're sick people that need to get well.
So you're sick, not an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. And recognizing that programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, they really work. I mean, you have to actually work them. And, you know, some people don't work a program or whatever it is, and they relapse or they do terrible things or whatever. But there is help out there. And the differentiation between a normie and an alcoholic. Like, I don't think that alcohol is necessarily bad. I mean, it's obviously something I have to completely avoid or it'll kill me. But for other people, like most of my friends or community, they'll have one beer or a glass of wine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They're not addicts. They're not alcoholics. They just have like one glass of wine and that's okay. But for people that really suffer from alcoholism, it's important for them to know that there's help and that they can get better and that they don't have to suffer, whether it's treatment or AA or outpatient care, et cetera, et cetera. There's hope and there's recovery and life can get really, really good.
How and can, for instance, a family member or a friend help an alcoholic?
It is so hard. It's kind of heartbreaking. So the thing with alcoholics, like I said earlier, they're really tough. They're really strong. They have a lot of willpower. They have to get to a place of absolute desperation. And so, unfortunately, most families that love their family member, they actually end up enabling that alcoholic or that addict to continue drinking, to continue using, because they're prolonging the consequences. So instead of like paying your son's rent that month that he spent all his money on booze, and instead of going to work, like paying his rent so he doesn't get evicted, let him get evicted. He has to suffer those really harsh consequences of his actions in order for him to recognize that he has a problem and want to get help. The family has to be willing to let the person crash and burn.
It's kind of a controlled hitting rock bottom.
Well, it's not controlled. You have to completely let go. And so for families, we typically...
No, for family members to kind of control. So he could, you can say stop drinking, But you gotta observe whether he's drinking just for him not to die or not to end up just like my mom with the brain problem.
Yeah, I recommend people go to Al-Anon. So Al-Anon is like the sister program to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was created by the wives of the first alcoholics as a support system for wives, mothers, fathers, children, etc. of people that are actively drinking. And Al-Anon teaches a lot of great tools for family members to be able to understand alcoholism and to make educated, smart decisions that will ultimately help that alcoholic get sober or stay sober.
That's a website, that's a platform online?
Yeah. Just like there's AA meetings everywhere, there's also Al-Anon meetings everywhere. So you can just type in Al-Anon to Google and find meetings. And there's different types of meetings. Some are geared more towards parents. Some are geared more towards spouse. Some might be like co-ed or single sex. Some are for children. And there's different forms of Al-Anon.
So basically, there's almost nothing we can do as a society. Just not promoting, having drinks of our own.
There's general awareness that can be spread. As a society, I think if we choose to engage and promote healthier things, like instead of maybe, hey guys, let's go out to the bars and get drunk this weekend, maybe you shift that activity to something else of oh, we're going to take up, hiking, or hey guys, we're going to have a fun game night and we're going to drink, bubbly water instead, or starting within your own communities to just promote things that are life-giving instead of indulging in something that ultimately is toxic and poisonous.
So I was kind of I was having drinks since I was, I want to say, 13 to 14, just regular beer. Maybe then a bit later came vodka, whiskey, all that stuff. But I gave up drinking when I was, I want to say, 19 years old. I realized I was very skinny, so I ended up going to the gym. Mm-hmm. And at the first time, I want to say, 1 to 2 years, I was combining the gym and the parties. Then I realized that I want to look good, look better, be stronger more than I want to just drink. But at the same time, my whole friend circle has changed. I had nothing to do with those guys. They were still partying and drinking, etc. But I just changed my whole circle of friends.
Yep. That's what happened to me when I stopped drinking.
That's
all
hard.
The people that weren't really my friends that just wanted to drink and party, they disappeared so fast. Yeah. But that was good because they had their own problems.
So, Shavonne, the last question on my podcast is always the same. So let's have 2 assumptions with you. Assumption number 1 is the President of the United States is the most powerful human being on planet Earth.
Okay.
Assumption number 2 is you become one. Once you become the President of the US, Secret Service comes at you and says, hello, Shavonne, Mr. President, congratulations, we love you. You're the President right now. So we're Secret Service. We know all the answers in the world. We know everything, right? You ask us, we give you an honest answer. We give you the truth.
Ooh.
What would be your first question?
Ooh, that's good. I like it. I think we have to get to the bottom of the 5th generation warfare and who is this enemy that we're really fighting and where do they have their strongholds, and we've got to take them out because we're not going in a good direction. And it's one of my passions is to restore morality to this country. And that's why I said the hill that I'm willing to die on is truth and freedom. And both of those things are being radically attacked. And so understanding who the real enemy is and bringing that to light and removing the deception from our society. That's what I want to get at.
Would you expose it to the public?
Oh, yeah.
Right away?
Yeah. I mean, I try every day. I'm constantly talking about it. Usually people can't handle it when I bring it out full light. And so I'm finding ways that people can actually understand or digest it.
Yeah, but you're a president. The whole world is watching.
Oh, that's me currently. But as president, I would be really open and honest about it. Yeah.
Don't you think it's going to cause chaos? If you say, for instance, this group of people that you were thinking they were sheep, they were wolves. They are the enemy of the US, of the whole world, of the humanity, of the God.
Yeah. So I believe very strongly we do not fight flesh and blood. We're fighting powers and principalities. We're not here to fight humans. Humans are not the problem, but the elements or beings that are deceiving them That's the problem. And so I want to bring truth and light and awareness to things so that people can understand and not live under that layer of deceit and deception.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you do. I believe that's very important for the first responders, veterans, and of course for the society.
Yeah.
The more stable firefighters are, police department, officers, sheriffs, and all those guys, the more stable they are, the more stable the society is.
Yeah.
The more stable the society is, the more stable the US is. And the more stable the US is, the more stable the world is. The history has shown us this multiple times.
Yeah.
The more stable the United States are, the better for the world. So I will definitely pray for you, today, just for you to have this strength and not to give up and not to have drink in your entire life.
Thank you.
And to help as much people as you can. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It's great to be here.